So for our next panel, we're going to be spilling the tea. Can I get our panelists, our lovely panelists for spilling the tea to come up? I'm super excited for this because I think actually some really honest conversations are being had already in terms of, where are my panelists? Camilla, Seema, names. Kellyanne, where is she? There we go. Come on up. Super excited for this because we've got some more powerhouse women. Come and take a seat. And our lovely Neve, our partnerships and content director from Women of Web3, is going to be playing host. If I
might need that mic. Yes. Can you hear me on this one? Can you guys hear me? Yeah.
Oh, and unfortunately, Ashley couldn't join today. She's unwell, but we have some brilliant women, and thank you, Kellyanne, for stepping in last minute.
Thanks, Kellyanne.
I'm a full man's replacement to Ashley, but
Can everybody hear me okay? I'm kind of tilting my head awkwardly, but I'll try and fix it as we go on. So hi, everyone. My name is Neve. I am the Partnerships Director of Women of Web3. I'm also Head of Marketing at Factor Labs, which is a DeFi platform. Considering I've had to write down my own name and title, I'm going to let the ladies introduce themselves. I'm a little bit nervous with public speaking. So if you guys wouldn't mind just doing a brief introduction, that'd be fab.
Hi, I'm Kellyanne Pereira. I am a consultant in the Web3 space. I kind of tend to sit usually at the onboarding stage, so helping brands move into the space. In particular, I've been working with this company, Ape Squared, which is a metaverse production company. So I've been on that project for the last 2 years now. So actually that's one where we're at the point of about to roll out. We just closed our final round of investment at 197 million. So that was thank you. That was a good day in the office. And I'm also one of the founding members of an amazing network called London Women Leading Web3, of which I can see a few people in the room, which is a network of helping already in Web3 realize their full potential by having connections and a safe space to network. So that's me.
Thank you.
Everyone, I'm Camilla. My company Mojito, we are a Web3 consumer engagement platform for global brands. And so we build out all of the Web3 infrastructure to help brands onboard into Web3. So we've built out the platform for Sotheby's, for Pace Gallery, for consumer brands like Pernod Ricard. As Erica was saying, like any brand that sort of, when you hear the words DTC or how do you harness this new tech for a new form of consumer and community engagement, we build out all the nitty gritty Web3 infrastructure stuff for them. And so we also have an advisory business called Serotonin that we started about 2.5 years ago, where we help brands, mostly in Web3, but some brands enter and go to market. So figure out like the comms, marketing strategy, brand building piece of Web3 for brands across, DeFi, infrastructure, metaverse projects, everything. I have been working full-time in the industry since about 2017. I started at a company called Consensus that was doing a lot of the core early tool building in mostly the Ethereum ecosystem, launching projects like MetaMask and dev tools like Infura, actually just around the corner at Old Street when I first started. It's great to be back in the neighborhood. And before that, before my sort of journey into this, crossing the chasm into this weird world of Web3, I spent most of my career at a hedge fund before. So totally different industry, which I'm sure we'll get to in a bit.
Hi, everyone. It's good to be here. Lovely to see you all. I'm Seema Kinder-Johnson. I'm co-founder and COO of Nuggets. We are a decentralized identity and multi-rail payment platform. God, started way too early, 2016. We've been way too early. So yeah, and we still are. So as a whole industry, but my background's been in tech for over 20 years, worked for organizations like Skype, Microsoft, heading up go-to-market. So lots of experience in the operator side, but nothing really prepared me for Ethereum, blockchain and decentralization. So it's really good to be here.
Thank you. Fantastic panel. So I want to get straight into it. Women in all industries, I think, face challenges. And I can definitely say, having come into a role in Web3 recently, there's some unique obstacles working in this space. You're all working in the space right now, but having previously worked in different industries, what are the unique challenges you see in Web3, and what has surprised you most? And I'll go to you, Camilla, because you have the mic.
I'll hold the mic in the middle then forever. The challenges working Web3. So I actually, and I was joking with a friend of mine earlier today, coming from my first job out of university was actually for an aluminum company doing mining manufacturing, and then to like hedge fund world in New York, and now to tech. So I'd have to say net, the men in crypto, believe it or not, are a little bit more like on the nerdier, lower ego side. So it hasn't been as bad as maybe it has been in the past, but certainly you stand out. I mean, being in the industry long enough, like you walk into any crypto event and you probably know most of the women in the room. The good news is that a lot of people remember you because you're one of, 10 women at the conference or 10 women in the room. But so it's so amazing to see a room like this of women either who are already working in the industry or women who are curious to get into it, because this feeling it's been very rare over the last 6 years. And I'd say, when I was falling down the proverbial rabbit hole, which I'm sure many of you have either done or in the middle of, it's this thirst for understanding and knowledge about the space where you're like listening to podcasts in your morning commute and you need YouTube content. You don't know who to listen to because there's a lot of really bad advice out there. And I was just consuming everything I could get my hands on, which wasn't a lot in 2016, 2017. And so I'd go to meetups, I'd go to events exactly like this. And it was actually at a Web3 brunch in New York in 2016, I think it was, where for the first time going to those events, not as a technologist, I saw a woman up there speaking about sort of the storytelling in Web3 and why that was important to even for the world to understand these concepts. And I found her afterwards and I started working with her at Consensus. She was the chief marketing officer, Amanda Cassett. I followed her to help start Serotonin, and now at Mojito working for another fantastic woman CEO. She was the first woman I saw, one of many women, but the first woman I saw that kind of looked like me. She wasn't wearing just like a t-shirt with her name's company on it and like, cargo shorts in the middle of winter and talking about core protocol development. She actually was just sort of a fabulous senior woman that was doing something in the industry where I could see myself doing, not on the tech side, on the strategy, ops, marketing, comms, operations side. And so it was moments like that that I think will continue to be super important for onboarding everybody else into the space.
I think one of the challenges I kind of see being a woman in the Web3 space actually quite a lot of the time comes at the kind of the community level, particularly places like Discord. As you kind of just touched on there, there's this sort of, it's bro. A lot of it was created by, well, there's two things. I think something that's been covered quite a bit today is around the jargon usage, but particularly that being as a way to close doors to anybody coming into the Web3 space, but then also a lot of the native kind of Web3 techie people that created all of this stuff come from quite incel kind of ideologies. So there's sort of these two barriers there for women coming into the space of the closed door aspect anyway, and then particular anti-feminist kind of feelings towards women. So I think that's probably one of the biggest areas I've seen more so from working with a community and trying to grow a community as a woman and a woman-led project is how you kind of tackle that. So I found that more of a challenge than the other end of the scale, which is, I suppose, the finding the funding. But I know we're going to talk a lot about the issues of women receiving funding, but I think one of the biggest issues I found was more kind of that community level.
Okay. That actually kind of leads me on to my next question, which is, within the Web3 space, there's a lot of community events, there's a lot of conferences, there's just a lot going on. It's very, very busy. FOMO, I think, is very real. There's something on every week. And if you feel like you're not there, you're missing out. But as Eric kind of mentioned earlier on, like women tend to be primary caregivers. Like, unfortunately, we don't get to kind of have as much free time. Maybe we're not able to travel as much as our male counterparts, which is like sad but true in today's society. What kind of impact do you think that like lack of ability to attend some of these events has on women in the space? The lack of ability to network, and how do you think the lack of female attendance at some of those events, affects the industry as a whole, how it's perceived externally? And Seema, I'm going to ask you that, please.
Handy.
Isn't it?
So yeah, I think the thing is, like with all of, when you're building a network as a woman, even as a man, you need to have those sort of deeper relationships. And you only really get those when you meet people physically. I mean, we've all been doing so much more on Zoom, right? But when you meet someone in a physical way, you get that deeper rapport, that connection. And, ultimately, we all like to do business. We all like to invest. We all like to work with people that we like. So I think that's the thing, we need to be at those events. And it is really tough. I mean, I've got 2 children. I've got an 11-year-old and a 14-year-old. And when I started Nuggets, it was really, really tough because obviously I needed to make sure that someone was around to look after my children, because there was no way that I wanted to miss the next, consensus in New York, because I know that, I needed to get some deals over the line. So it's a real thing. And I think that's the thing. But because there's so many events, it's really tough to know which you should be going to. And I think some of us maybe need to do like a prioritization task of which are the ones that you should try to carve out and go to, because they are so incredibly valuable. I mean, we did one of our deals with, a really big community after we met them, and they were like, oh my God, now I really want to work with you. So I think you do need to be at these events to build those, but so yeah, I think there's no real easy answer to that, because like everything, whether it's the tech industry, it's hard to go beyond like the PowerPoint presentation or see what you're doing on a website. You actually need to go and meet people physically. And I think COVID gave us this false sense of security, really, of we're going to do every meeting online. And actually, I think we need to maybe prioritize some of those events, but it's tough.
I would also say, so not having children yet, but that's probably going to be a reality for me the next sort of 2 to 3 years. I've thought a lot about this because I go to a lot of the events now. I have the time. Web3 as an industry is largely pretty remote first as well. There's obviously exceptions, but a lot of us work in fully remote teams. My team's fully remote. We always will be. We will never have a headquarters. We will never have an office. A lot of our clients and customers are, or hybrid models. And so it's sort of pros and cons, which is part of the desperation to get together in person, finally in the meet space, as they call it, in a physical space with someone rather than just online. So there's definite pros and cons. There's the pressure to always be there, to make those relationships, to show up if you have the time. But I'd say it's also like the other side of that coin is that it's an amazing industry for moms, and especially for new moms, because you can work from home. And so if the conference is, once a quarter, you go, or once a month, you go. But on a day-to-day basis, you're at home, you're nursing off camera while taking a meeting. I've seen so many young women get into this space, especially as a lateral career move after taking a year or 2 off to have a child. They've had their background in consumer marketing or in finance or something, and they've spent a year at home, or even after their maternity leave, diving deep into this new weird world, listening to those podcasts and everything, and they don't necessarily want to go back to their industry. They want to start again. This whole space is a great way to do that because no one has a background in it. Like even people that have been in seemingly dog years, you're only talking about like 5-6 years. Everybody's new and coming from completely different industries with different experiences to bring that experience to bear in crypto. So it's also Web3. It's also a great way to sort of come in and make that lateral move as still a senior leader and executive and bring your experiences in the past. So 2 sides to each coin. There's definitely the downside, but I'd say there's also a lot of opportunity for women in it.
That leads me on to my next question, which is there is a lot of opportunity, but we've also spoken earlier on about how some women are working for free in this space. Across the board, women tend to be paid less, just in general. And, women typically get less access to funding as founders as well. So how does that play out in the world of Web3? And what role do you think Web3 will have in leveling the playing field?
Okay. I mean, yeah, it's the tough reality is women get less funding. I know. I even know people that when they were going out to the VC funds for their projects, they actually had men do the applications on their behalf, just knowing because they didn't want to have to sacrifice their chances of getting funding, which is a shame. That sort of stuff is obviously not going to help women progress in the space. But then as as an individual, I can understand why people do that when the statistics are the statistics, which I think is men got 4 times more amount of investment last year than women did. And this isn't because women have worse ideas at all. It's, I think, mainly because the people that are giving the funding are the male, still in male dominated industries. I think networks like, our network of London Women Leading Web3, World of Women, any kind of Web3 network that is out there. I can think of in our network, just off the top of my head, I can think of at least 3 of our women, 4 who are VC investors. So there's like a concentration of women looking for Web3, projects that they want to invest in or want to fund. So I think connecting or embedding yourself in these kind of networks where it's quite hard to find investors that believe in it outside of concentrated networks, I think that's something that would definitely help people if you're out there looking for funding. And yeah, did you want to?
Yeah, so absolutely agree with you on the funding point. As a female founder myself, obviously, it's harder as a woman when you go in, but I think one of the ways that I've been able to get around that is having those allies, because whether they are female or male, because, ultimately it's like tech. Most white male teams get funding. They've gone to the right schools, they have the right networks. So what I've been able to do, and lots of friends and others in our network have been able to provide things like warm introductions. That's absolutely a real thing that you need to do. No investor, they have whether you're a woman or a man, no investor sits there answering cold emails. So I think it's just knowing that you need that warm introduction when you're looking for that, and that vouching. And I think that's a real practical thing that we can all be doing. And if anyone reached out to me, I'd be happy to do that for you, because I've been helped throughout my 6-7 year journey with Nuggets. I think the other things as well is, I employ women, I employ people within our team, and I do see when a woman will apply for a role, when they almost feel like they have to justify their salary. So I think we all, and I actually think it was the badass Cindy that said this. She said, as a woman, we all need to look in the mirror and basically ask for the salary we want before we crack up. And I think that's, obviously within the bounds. You need to do some research on what the going rate for that particular role is. But I think we need to ask for what we want. And I think that's the thing. But that's the reality in everything in life, right? You have to, if you don't ask, you don't get. And I think that's one of the things. I think as an employee, sometimes we've all been guilty of sitting there thinking someone's going to tap us on the shoulder and say, well done, here's a 30% pay rise for you going above and beyond. And that life just isn't like that. Life isn't fair in that way. So I think we do need to ask for what we want. And I think on the funding side, I've sat in front of women investors as well and had the same limiting questions at me that I've not, and actually I've had better meetings with men. So I don't know what the right answer there is, but I think the warm intro is the way to go.
Yeah. And just to add as well for, amazing advice for women in the room who are considering or will be raising funds, but even just asking for a salary, and this is not unique to Web3, the whole like tapping on your shoulder and saying, you've done an amazing job, here's a raise. Women are so much worse at that than men. I even find myself guilty of it sometimes and in the past, where you think there's this like floating meritocracy, your company, that like everyone's just going to get rewarded for their contributions. But women are much less worse often than their male colleagues in telling their own story and talking about how much work they've been doing and talking about how well they're doing. They think it's just going to be like equitably fallen into their lap and rewarded. And some great leaders and managers do recognize it and do that, but it's definitely more of, for some reason, a female thing to not necessarily ask for what you deserve, and especially without giving all the caveats and the evidence. And the other thing I'd say is, and now when it comes maybe a little bit more to Web3 and a little bit more to startups in general, is financial education, not just about your salary, but about your salary, your equity, your benefits, the whole package, what access you get. Women have historically not been investors outside of the home or the job as much as men. COVID totally changed that. Like 50% of women under COVID got more interested in maybe alternative investments. Some of it was crypto, some of that went well, some of that went poorly, or just traditional markets in general, or just understanding, outside of their salary and maybe their 401k, What options do they have for their own personal investment portfolio? What do they do with their savings essentially? And so understanding as you're getting roles in this space, I'm sure a lot of those offers will come with equity. And because it's crypto, some of that'll be token, and then some of that'll actually be more traditional company equity. And so, as you said, it's educating yourself about just sort of how that package all works in general. If you get an equity offer, what questions do you follow up with? You know, because they're going to give you a percentage, and in a vacuum, that means absolutely nothing. And so it's sort of that educating about what a salary in this space kind of looks like, I think is coming as well with just in general better financial education tools for women and better efforts like through LVest and like non-crypto related things about how to educate yourself about that conversation.
Yeah, and I think just to add, if anyone is at the point or thinking about trying to secure investment, it's really hard to say this when you just want the money, you want to get going, but just be really careful who you get your investment from, especially as women, because I think we have like an extra layer of having to prove that we're worthy enough than males in the space. I think males kind of are seeing, particularly in Web3, where a lot of things are risky and they are unknown. So it's harder for investors to want to put their money to that. But males might be seen as kind of maverick, like pioneers, like paving the way, whereas the same woman going for the same project would be seen as they have to prove themselves doubly to ensure that they get that investment. So I think being careful of who you take your money from and making sure that you have a partner that is supportive of the project, where you're not having to prove yourself 2 times over in order to achieve the same thing that a male doesn't have to do because they're seen as really cool and pioneering. So yeah, I think it's something to just think about, is where you get your investment from.
Thank you, guys. So my next question is something that I'm very passionate about, and it kind of harks back to the confidence element that we were just speaking about there, about asking for what you're worth. And like, take this as your sign. If you're thinking about not applying for a job, apply for it, because I was approached for the job that I'm in now, and I was like, absolutely not. This man is mad. And look at me now, I'm a half day. But no, you know, there's a lot of imposter syndrome, I think, in general within the female space, but also within Web3, because it is so new and everything just feels like very accelerated. And I think, you know, we kind of hold ourselves back from applying for roles. And my mom always says, let them say no, don't self-disqualify. So, you know, what are some of the career opportunities that are available to women in this space right now? Maybe from like a non-technical side, you know, people who want to maybe bridge their skills and come over to Web3. And how can they best position themselves as desirable candidates? What do employers want to see? And I might just go to you first, Seema, on that, because I know that you run your own.
Yes. So I think there's some brilliant transferable skills, you know, from operations to marketing. I also think, you know, why not on the engineering side as a woman? Because the thing is, it's also bloody new. You know, this is nascent stuff. I remember when I set up Nuggets, everyone laughed at me because I couldn't find a developer. So I thought, you know, this is a long time ago, and I couldn't find a developer that understood Ethereum. And I emailed Vitalik, and straight away, within 20 minutes, he came back and said, you need to speak to so-and-so. And I was like, oh my God, you can make anything happen in this space. It's bonkers. But I think that's the thing. Don't just think, obviously there's the marketing roles, that's great. And there's content and all of those things. And I think they're massively valuable, because there are no playbooks in crypto like there are in SaaS or in D2C type marketing. So I think it's so incredibly exciting, because no one's going to hand you, here you go, here's the playbook of how you launch a product and go to market within Web3. So I think everything's up for grabs. And I think the other thing to understand is nothing's been defined really. You know, one of the reasons that's exciting about this space, but also scary, is that, you know, you wake up, this 24/7 crazy ass space, is that you wake up and there's been another regulatory change. You know, innovation is moving at such a fast pace, and regulators, legal, compliance teams can't keep up with it. So it's massively exciting. And because of that, there's just everyone's learning. So yeah, I don't know if that answers the question.
Yeah, it actually made me think, you know, here we are, International Women's Day, talking about tech, obviously Steve Jobs' quote, but his famous quote of like, if you look around the whole world right now, every single institution that exists today was built by people literally no smarter than you. that is never more true than in Web3, especially. We have terms, even now, the terms we've created really don't serve us anymore, like NFT and DAO and everything mean things that aren't really true of their core meaning. We definitely need new terms because these are net new concepts. And so we need a new vocabulary to be able to describe these things to the world. The ones we have today are pretty shitty. But I would also say it's largely crypto has been an industry so far built by back-end engineers. Because it's such a core infrastructure level technology, like it literally sits just above hardware, even below like the platform and the application level. And this is what's so amazing about building Nuggets for you over the last couple of years. We've finally, since 2020, really, finally worked our way up to the application layer. Everything else going on in crypto before was either trading the token, which is all you could do, or building out the core tooling in the infrastructure, which like no one could use yet. And so finally, 2020, we actually have applications that consumers can use. DeFi was one of the first. Now you have NFTs, the applications of which are only constrained by the human imagination, especially as brands and artists and everyone get into them. And so this is the very beginning of actually having stuff in Web3 that consumers can play with on a daily basis. So the industry that's been built so far by these back-end engineers, it's like they've built an engine without any thought to the wheel or the color of the seats or the music that's going to play. Like, and it's like, hey, this revolutionary thing, we've built an engine. And everyone's like, yeah, how does it look and how do we use it? And everyone's like, okay, that's for everyone else to figure out. That's the easy part. And so finally, the need right now in crypto is so much on product design, on consumer design, on go-to-market, on storytelling. You've built an engine that people didn't clamor for cars right away. And so all of those other skill sets within ops, marketing, product design, everything that, you know, women are also usually more intuitive and a little bit better at sometimes. That's all so needed in droves within the industry across every single piece of it. The NFT finance side, the DeFi side, the B2B side, the NFT side. And so that's the place now I'm seeing the most growth. You're always going to need backend and core devs and core engineers, but there's so much need now as like people come into this party because they hear it's good and the stuff like isn't usable and doesn't look very good. And so regardless of your background, if it's anything in consumer or anything doing that, that's what's needed to come in. And a lot of people don't even know they need those roles, but I think that's sort of where we are in the overall evolution of our industry.
Thank you. I'm after getting the rolly hands from Lauren, so I think we have to wrap it up. But I just want to finish on, you know, what is the best part, and if we can keep this quick, but what is the best part of working in Web3 and why are you excited about the future of it? Maybe we leave on that note.
I think the best part is the interactiveness that you can have with your audience for the first time. And as women as well, this is something that you can kind of use to help change the narrative and help us kind of tackle a gender issue, is because, you know, brands don't exist in Web3 until they move into that. So there isn't like a CMO who's been in position for like 40 years that's got all this really strict brand identity. Like this is the first time where we're all starting from a blank canvas, whether it's an existing kind of heritage brand or if it's a brand new startup, you can change the visuals and the way you interact with your audience. So like our company, for example, the metaverse, the gaming aspect of the metaverse, we have one character, which is like a really kick-ass woman. And whether you're a male player or a female player in real life, you're playing as a female character. You can use right across the board, engaging female influencers and key opinion leaders. So I think the options that we now have to create a new brand perspective, and as women, we're able to kind of support for the first time having a real input on the gender bias that exists. And then just the interactive, I think that any company, any brand that is going to do Web3, the ones that will be successful and not just successful, but that will survive, are the ones that truly kind of embrace the co-collaboration with audience. You know, the way it was, this world appeared because people are getting sick of having brands deliver finished products to you as a consumer where it may have no value or little value, whereas now your fan base are your investors. They own parts of your brand. So the people that are going to be successful are the ones that really truly kind of embrace that co-collaboration with audience.
Thank you. Okay, I think we're going to have to leave it there. I'm sorry. But thank you so much. This was really great, and I hope you guys all enjoyed it very much. And I'm going to hand back over to Lauren.